So we're here today with Geraldine Taylor from Republican Sinn Féin. We're here to find out just a little bit more about who are Republican Sinn Féin and where they come from, Geraldine, and you tell us where you came from. What is your core message as an All-Ireland political party, and really educate the people of Ireland about who you are.
Well, there was a split, as you know, in the Republican movement in 1969, and there were those who started the provisional movement, and they went to Commandant Tom Maguire, who was the last surviving member of the Second All-Ireland, to be endorsed by him as the government of the Republic. They were endorsed at that stage. In 1986, the same people went back to Commandant Maguire and wanted endorsed again, and he chased them. The people who he endorsed as a legitimate government of the Republic was Republican Sinn Féin and also the Continuity IRA. And that's the way it has been. In 1986, we walked out when they decided to recognise Leinster House. It was a downward slope, we knew. So we walked out of the Mansion House with the Republican movement intact, not as dissidents, but as the Republican movement, who did not deviate from the Republican path. Our sole aim was to get rid of England out of Ireland, and we stand by that and have stood by that. We've been in the Republican movement, been part of the Republican movement, and that's the way we've stood on the rock of the Republican movement, which was founded in the 1920s.
And what you said about the Commandant, that about the last remaining member from
the Second
the Second All. That there is a key point that maybe is not picked up or not known by a lot of people. Do you just get your message out into the media?
No, well, there's a media blackout with us because it doesn't suit the status quo either in the Free State or here within the occupied 6 counties. I'll tell you, we went a lot of years ago at 9/11 happened in New York that time, and we were in London, Downing Street, to hand them our policy documents, which was our new, us all new, and our policy documents. The press, as you know, stand directly facing 10 Downing Street. Well, they were all on their way out when we were permitted to go in, and we stopped the press, and we were trying to give them an interview, and the press informed us, this is your freedom of the press and democracy in England, and they told us they were not allowed to interview any of us because Downing Street went out and told them that they would lose their place in their position facing 10 Downing Street if they interviewed any of us standing outside.
So it's quite an interesting point you make there.
And I was one of the people who were there at the time.
Going back to the split, Geraldine, 1986 was when the Republican movement split. Now, the media of today would certainly label Republican Sinn Féin and anybody who would support them as dissidents. However, if one understands republicanism and its tradition, where it came from, it was those who accepted the British rule in Ireland and accepted the legitimacy of those institutions created by partition that dissented. Would I be correct?
That's right. They dissented from the policies and the principles of the Republican movement.
And
they walked away from the very rock, the foundations on which the Republican movement was built on. When we walked out in 86, we walked out standing on that rock, very firmly on that rock. And we have not recognised and do not recognise partitions assemblies, which is Westminster, Stormont or Leinster House. The only government, the legitimate government of this country that we recognise is the government of the 32 county Irish Republican Socialists.
That's excellent, Geraldine, for telling us it. But what the people listening to this video might not know is when that split happened, those who, from your perspective, who dissented are what people know now as Sinn Féin, or from your perspective, Provisional Sinn Féin. So they are, using the term as Republicans, yet they are ministers
of the Crown. They didn't just go and recognise Leinster House. They now sit in Stormont administering British rule here. So they're not Republicans. They are definitely not Republicans. They have called on the nationalist community become informers to the police. They're on the policing board, which is an armed force of occupation in this country, a British paid armed police force. There was a riot took place the other day on the New Lodge, right? And I was in Ardoyne on Monday, and one of their councillors and a few of their heavy hands went round to a certain family on the New Lodge in the flats and were getting them put out. She got onto the news media and has said she's going to the social services. She wants the Peters and she wants this family moved out of their homes because some of their sons were out. Right.
Yeah.
Now, in those areas, they know who all the drug dealers are. Why did you not go out and get them all put out? Why an innocent family? Why persecute a young family and go and get them put out of their homes and work with the police on this to get these young families moved out, this young family moved out? They are part and parcel of administered not only British rule, but British laws here, suppressive laws against the Republican people and the nationalist community. And the suppression of the nationalist community was very relevant in Ardoyne again, when they allowed that Orange Parade to march past that small enclave and those shops in Ardoyne. They're all Catholics there. There's no need for them to walk past that. There's another road where they could take, but they don't. They torture and torment those people and take away their civil rights and their civil liberties every year, and they're permitted to do so.
So, if we could just touch maybe, Geraldine, on how, in terms of policy, in terms of getting to a united Ireland, putting forward a proposal, a peaceful, solution.
Well, we are the only organisation that has the only document that could really bring about a peaceful solution to the problems in our country. We want England out of here once and for all. They are the main causes of the problems within our country, not the Irish people. They're all Irish people, irrespective of what their religious beliefs are or anything else. To me, religion is a personal belief for every individual, and they're entitled to that. They're entitled to hold those religious beliefs. But the policies and the politics of the country are for all the people of the country, irrespective of who you are or what you are. And we want England out of here once and for all. And the only document that offers that solution is the RNU policy document, which we have, which the Provost threw out, and it was thrown out, and it was instigated by the Belfast crowd to get rid of the RNU policy documents in the 70s. Because they said then it appeased the Protestant community. We don't have to appease anybody. We want to include everyone. And the RNU policy document is an inclusive document that protects the rights, that would have a small majority within the 9 counties of Ulster, which would work for them, that they would have the majority up here, and to let them know that we are not against our Protestant neighbours. We are all for them. We want them all, with all of us working together as one unit for the betterment of the whole country and for the future generations of this country. And the way past it is this RNU document, to let them know that we know you're part and parcel of this country, you're people of this country. We need you and you need us, and we'll protect your rights and protect the rights of all the people of the country. Mm-hmm. And that's why the RNU policy documents, the only solution to the problem here.
I've read the document myself, and I think there's a comment at the bottom of it that says it's not set in stone, it's open.
It's always open to debate.
It's open.
And I mean, we have sent this document to a lot of the unionist parties, but we wanted to go and meet with them and debate this document, but we've had no response from them so far. And we've let them know that if there's anything within this document that they would like to add to or take from, we're prepared to debate with them at all stages. And that's the only way we as Irish people can solve our problems, without the interference of the England at all.
RNU, they talk about having the 4 provinces.
Yes,
and a national assembly, yeah?
Yes, that's right.
And within the 9 county Ulster, I would assume Stormont would be the place.
Well, I don't know whether there might be a place there or not, because that has been the bastion of all our problems here.
Indeed, indeed. Just to give the viewers who may not be familiar with the actual document, basically each state, Ulster, Munster, Leinster, Connacht, would have their own parliament.
That's correct.
And then they would send a certain amount to a national parliament.
That's right.
So in effect,
Everyone would have their voice
exactly.
heard in the central government, and that's including the 9 counties of Ulster.
And
the Protestant community would have their voice heard there.
they would, and also another point that I picked up on was they would have more of an influence in a New Ireland than they would have influence at Westminster. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
That's correct, because they're working for their own country and for their own people, and they would have a very good influence, a great influence on the Irish people as a whole throughout the 32 counties, with no interference from a foreign occupation, who doesn't give a shit about them really at the end of the day. They don't care what happens to them. They give them this face thing that they're the greatest. When the inception of this false statelet all those years ago, it was a Protestant state for a Protestant people, and they used those people to always know more. The hierarchy did it. And the ordinary working class people were no better off than the rest of us.
You just mentioned the start of the state. Do you want to, just for the viewers, just maybe educate them from your perspective, how that state came about? Just briefly, just a paragraph
Well,
or so.
I mean, the people of Ireland voted. The 32 counties of Ireland voted to get rid of English rule in Ireland. And England, typical of England, democracy went right through the window.
What was the
Lloyd George, Lloyd George.
What was how many seats did Sinn Féin win at that second door?
Oh,
72 or so?
Yeah, 2 seats.
Yeah.
Now that was the answer from the Irish people to the English government, but they didn't listen to that. No, democracy was thrown through the window. They decided to start up this false statelet. It suited Lloyd George, that way excuse for a Welshman. It suited him to separate the 6 counties of Ulster from the rest of Ireland. Yet democratically, the people of Ireland democratically voted to rid them out of all of Ireland. But they stopped democracy dead in its tracks, and it has, see, from it, there's been no democracy within these occupied 6 counties. No, and there still isn't. There still is no democracy here.
We currently have a power sharing arrangement.
Yeah, that suits the status quo, including the British government, because those Provo councillors and MLAs are all doing England's work for them.
That's great. So we'll just wrap it up with this last question here, Geraldine. It's really about you've clearly been through the worst of the last 40 years here. You've been there from kicked off really, and you're still here.
Mm-hmm.
When you think back to the early 60s, late 60s, 70s, and the whole time through all the trouble that was here, and you see what the people have now, and the many people who
Lost their lives. And I'm not talking about just the Irish people who lost their lives. I'm talking about British soldiers and all. I mean, they lost a lot of lives. There were somebody's sons and daughters and that, and they paid a price. The ordinary foot soldier, of course, not the higher rankers. And we all had a price to pay, and a very heavy price we had to pay. That was the English people as well as the Irish people. And unfortunately, by the looks of things, we're going to have to go through the whole thing all over again until we get what we want, England out of here. England out of here once and for all.
That's great, Geraldine. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the viewers who'll be watching this video, because it's going to be going out?
Well, now, let me
across
give you a
the UK
story.
and Ireland.
After split in '86, and I was part of the massive movement, as you can understand, as it was throughout all those years. And I was out selling the paper Saoirse, our paper Saoirse. A lot of my old comrades refused to speak to me. It was a blanket against me because I stood up. I stood by the principles of the movement I joined, and I wasn't going to change it to suit anybody. That was my beliefs. I wouldn't have joined the Republican movement if I hadn't believed in what it stood for and what it meant for the Irish people as a whole. And I wasn't going to change it to suit any individual or anything else. And it was a very lonely time at that stage. And I remember night after night going to bed saying, why am I here? What am I doing? Why am I torturing myself? And then I made a promise one night. to the men who died, and men and women who were buried in Milltown Cemetery and cemeteries throughout Ireland. I made them a promise that I would never give up. I would keep going for their sakes, because the price they paid until we grew up a stronger movement again, and then I could safely retire. But for their sakes I had to keep the flame burning, because they paid the price, and they were my friends and my comrades. And I made that promise, and I'm upholding that promise.
And you're still here, and your movement seems to be growing there.
It is growing.
What's the issues you face at the minute as a political party, an All Ireland political party? Is there issues that you're campaigning on at the minute that's not getting into the media?
Whatever we have that doesn't get into the media, there's very few things get into the media, and that's north and south. That's right across the board, because both status quo in the north and in the south don't want us to be gaining any ground. But we are gaining ground, and we are getting our message across without the news media, because there's no democracy in the news media here in Ireland, north or south, because they're suppressed by the status quo, the governments, that they're told you don't print this, you don't print that. But the truth will always come out in the end.
If your organisation would like to,
Well, I'm hoping that our president will get on to your programme as well, and he'll put very strong points of view across as well.
Excellent.
You know.
So, Geraldine Taylor, thanks very much.